Good evening to all of you. Thanks for being here once again, ladies and gentlemen. This, as you know, is the 17th in the Rethinking City series from Studio INHAF. I don't have to tell you all who have been with us all through the series on what INHAF has stood for, what it represents, and so on. Well, we began this, as some of you will recall, in mid-June, well after the COVID lockdown began in India in the first week of March. We have hosted so far about 110 speakers, and that's a staggering number compared to anything else that has been held as such webilogs and discussions in this period since March. Over 20 institutions have partnered us so far, but the INHAF series is got about 40 institutional partners who have joined us in making this happen. Thanks to all of those institutions for being with us. Attendance at the cumulative level of participation has far exceeded our expectations at over 25,000 people between the online platform that we are on today and other social media platforms. I'm not going to say anything about this eminent and extremely distinguished speakers that we have got from 4 different time zones. We have got Mr. Sam Pitroda from Chicago. We have got Dr. Vijay Jagannathan from Washington, DC. We have got Dr. Park from Seoul, and we have got Arvind Tiwary from Bangalore. We have got Kirti Shah, who you all know, of course. He's down, and that is the reason that I have stepped in today. My name is Hariharan, as you can see there on the screen, and I have been part of the governing council of INHAF, and have known Kirti Shah, like many of them know, for over 20, 25 years now. Over to you, Dr. Jagannathan. Good morning to you. I know this is 8:30 or 8. Is it 9:30 a.m. for you, or is it 8:30 a.m. for you there, Dr. Jagannathan? I know there is a difference of about an hour between your time and Chicago's EDT time for Mr. Pitroda. I will leave the floor to you to see what you would want to say. Take this forward. To the rest of you as listeners out there, I request you to look at the chat box for the introductions of each of these eminent and distinguished speakers, as I said earlier. You will also see notes on INHAF, on CityNet, which is the program that will sort of take the set of discussions that we are having here on the webilogs into things that will lie on the ground. And there will, of course, be all the profiles of these speakers that you will see on the chat box. If you have questions to put up, I request you all to please put them up on the Q&A box and not on the chat box. That will help the speakers to monitor and then to see how they can offer you the last 20, 25 minutes to respond to those questions, insights, perspectives, observations that you will all be making. We are all aware, acutely aware. There are many of you out there among the attendees who are themselves leaders, and Dr. Jagannathan will take the floor from here and see how he wants to steer the discussion. Welcome to all of you. Thank you once again for making time, all of you speakers. We'll go on mute now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hariharan, and welcome to all of you, wherever you are. I should say good evening, good morning, good afternoon. And I hope I don't have to say good night, because we will be having a very exciting session today. Now, let me begin by just going back in memory lane and looking at what we were doing in about 32 years ago. In the city of Kolkata, we did a survey of all the pavement dwellers to find out who they were and what they were doing. And one of the things which came out was that the average person was sending about 1/3 of the wages they were earning back to the village to support their families. Now, fast forward to 2020, and when we had the COVID lockdown, you saw what happened, that these were the very same people who were put into an extremely vulnerable position. And that brings me to I think one of the topics of the seminar, which is that given the fact that today we are facing what is sometimes called a black swan event, or sometimes called a VUCA moment, how can technology really help cities in improving the lives and livelihoods of its citizens? Now, obviously, I need to explain what the VUCA is all about. V stands for volatility. And as we all know, what happened in March was that all of a sudden, the livelihoods were upended for these people who desperately relied on the daily wages to support entire families. U stands for uncertainty. And again, there what happened was nobody knew what was coming next. They had to think of the next meal, and they were living in a cash economy in which there was no cash. So they had to rely on doles for a set of people who are very proud of the fact that they were independent of the governance system and supporting their families. The C stands for chaos. The fact that they couldn't even go back home, there was no transportation. And for many of them who walked on the streets, it was a pathetic sight, reminding one of the horrors of 1947, of the partition. And the A stands for the ambiguity, the fact that everything was fluid, that the governance structure wasn't even giving clear instructions. Now, we had a webinar a few weeks ago in which we brought in a colleague of ours from Pakistan. And what was interesting was that Pakistan also had the same issues as India. They also had these, they imposed a lot of restrictions on paper, but it wasn't enforced. So the result was that the way the COVID has folded out in Pakistan in the cities and in the villages is a lot better than India. I'm not saying it's as good as in Korea and other places, but the amount of suffering was a lot less. So what I'm trying to say here is that we do recognize that urbanization and poverty go hand in hand, and that whatever we talk in terms of technology has to be in terms of how we can not only improve the lives and livelihoods of the poor, but essentially improve the system of governance, basically saying disrupting bad governance with better governance. That's what we really need to do. And the example we have, which we'll be hearing today from Dr. Park of Seoul, is one illustration of how technology can really be used to handle the same VUCA moment in a very different way. That's a fascinating case study he'll be telling us. But let's not lose hope, because if you look back at Y2K, which also, if you remember in the 1990s, was considered to be another VUCA kind of moment, it didn't happen. And in fact, for India, it was a proud moment, because all the great efforts which Mr. Sam Pitroda and others had put in the 1980s suddenly opened up enormous opportunities for income and wealth generation. Mr. Tiwary is sitting there in Bangalore. It was unimaginable that in the 1990s, we'd be talking about Bangalore as a Silicon Valley of India, but it has happened. So there is a lot of hope, there's a lot of optimism, while at the same time, one has to be careful that technology is not the solution for everything unless we ground it in the reality of policy making. So with these few words of introduction, let me now introduce Mr. Sam Pitroda, whom as probably he doesn't even need an introduction for all the things he has done in the service of his country as well as for technology. But for those of you who come from the millennial and other generations, maybe I should just say a few words that Sam was the pioneer who really brought in the two things which have made all the difference in India. That is the telecom revolution and ICT. In the early 80s, what we had in India was something called the dead telephone, which probably many of you, the younger generation, are not aware of today. You pick up a telephone, there's no dial tone. You dial a number and someone else from a third city answers you. And that was the reality we faced. With that kind of infrastructure, there's no way we could have been globally connected. All that changed because there was the marriage of technology, the fact that there were a number of technology missions which were able to bring in several sectors back into the century of progress was all possible because of the visionary actions he's taken. So with those few words of introduction, Mr. Pitroda, over to you. We look forward to hearing your views on how urbanization and technology can be brought together in the context of countries like India and several others in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa, where the biggest problem is that we have 40% of the population under poverty, and about 80% of the population rely on the informal sector for employment, with very bad housing and with very little prospects of ever becoming a part of the globalized economy the way we see it, because of the lack of decent education and skills. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Dr. Jagannathan. Friends, greetings from Chicago. It is indeed a special privilege for me to be here with you to talk about urbanization and technology. I want to compliment Kirti Bhai and his colleagues for taking this initiative. I believe it is rare to see a series as long as 10, 20 sessions where they've been able to capture the interest of audience and come up with some very innovative ideas to explore. I thank them for the opportunity given to me. I'm going to focus on technology in a very different way than something to just look at hardware and software to improve productivity and efficiency. Technology has played very important role in the last 30, 40 years. In particular, technology has improved longevity, decreased infant mortality, improved transportation, communication, energy, helped in urbanization, and the list goes on and on. Most of the technologies has roots in defense, in sort of high tech, and it is only now that we see a lot of technologies related to biotech, nanotech, stem cell research that's going to have huge impact on health. But to me, the most important contribution of technology is all about connectivity. For the first time in the human history, all 8 billion people are essentially connected. Never happened before. And this happened in last 25 years. What does it mean to have connected world? Unfortunately, we haven't quite grasped the power of connectivity in the way we should have. So my focus today is going to be mainly on connectivity and urbanization. When I started my work in India on telecom, like Dr. Jagannathan said, we had only 2 million telephones. It used to take 5 to 10 years to get a telephone connection. The joke then was half of India was waiting for telephone lines and other half was waiting for dial tone. From there, in a short span of 30, 35 years, we have come to a point where we have 1.2 billion phones. We are essentially connected. We are a country of connected people. But we haven't really focused on what does this connectivity mean. And COVID-19 has really brought a whole new dimension. COVID-19 tells me and all of us that we are all interconnected, interrelated. COVID-19 did not distinguish between rich and poor, urban, rural, educated, uneducated, young or old. So the message to me from COVID-19 basically says there are only 2 important things in life. 1, planet, and 2, people. Planet does not need people. People need planet. So whatever we do in urban planning, we must keep in mind all the time that there are only 2 things that matter. And when we talk of planet, we really talk about sustainability. whether it is global warming or whatever. But sustainability is at the core of taking care of planet. And when we talk about people, inclusion is at the core of the idea of human being. We need inclusion everywhere. So these two key concepts, sustainability and inclusion, should percolate down in all aspects of urban planning. And we'll try to connect some of these things. So to me, information technology brings about openness, accessibility, connectivity, networking, democratization, accountability, and decentralization. But of all of these things, there are three most important things about connectivity. One is democratization. Connectivity allows us to empower people in all aspects of life. They begin to take control of their life with connectivity. I have in the palm of my hand this little device that allows me to do lots of things. Check weather, get education, talk to my doctor, look at my schedule, do my work, read a book, listen to music, watch a movie. And all of a sudden, everybody has been delivering services to me. And I am in control of my destiny. Never happened before. Somebody else decided what you could and could not do. Now I decide what I can and I cannot do. So one is democratization aspect of connectivity. Second is decentralization. Every aspect of life has been decentralized. I don't need to go to somebody to find something. I can get it myself. I remember when people used to talk about automatic dialing, and I've read stories about this. Everyone was concerned that all the telephone operators will go out of business, that you are making every human being an operator. If we had listened to all the complaints then, all 8 billion people today would be telephone operators to handle the amount of calls. So now we have decentralized things to a point, people begin to do their own thing. If I want to read a book, I don't need to go to library, as an example. And the third and the most important aspect of connectivity is demonetization. And this is going to have huge impact on urbanization. What does demonetization mean? It means that slowly and slowly, many of these services are going to be essentially free. Telecom has been essentially demonetized. Today, telecom is almost free. I can call all over the world, I can have video calls, and I really don't pay much. So over a period of time, for example, transportation is going to be demonetized. Take Uber as an example. If I have an Uber, I don't need to own a car. With technology in the works, energy will be demonetized. I see a day 15 years from now where you'll have a little battery in the back of your house and your entire house would be self-sufficient. Not just solar panel. There'll be new kind of batteries. So energy would be free. Transportation would be free. Food is going to be very cheap because today we live in an age of surplus and not scarcity. We can produce anything. But unfortunately, we wind up producing for people who can afford and not people who need. I have always said that the best brains in the world are busy solving problems of the rich, who really don't have problems to solve. And as a result, problems of the poor don't get the right talent. And I think demonetization is going to change the way we see economy. When self-driven car comes into the market, which is not too far, I won't have to own a car. I won't need garage. I won't need parking space. I won't need insurance, and I won't need driver's license. I'll be able to order a car wherever I want to go. It'll drop me off. And I see a day when that will be part of the city tax. But what it would mean is there'll be less cars. Today we produce in this world 50 million cars a year. 90% of the time, car is parked. So when self-driven car comes into the marketplace, I would probably produce 5 million cars a year and not 50 million. It will save a lot of steel. It will demonetize transportation, as an example. Look at what is happening to office space. We have all of a sudden learned that we can work from home. In my case, I have not left my home in Chicago for last 6 months. Maximum distance I have traveled from my home is my mailbox. I have 5 cars. I have not driven any. I have not worn a suit. I don't wear dress shoes. I don't wear ties. And all of a sudden, I'm beginning to realize, what good is all this material that I have acquired? I'm beginning to like this lifestyle. Don't have to fill gas. Don't have to go to laundry every week with 6 shirts and 2 suits. And I think I don't need an office anymore. I've had an office for 20 years on 18th floor in a building here. I haven't been there for 6 months. Lots of us can work from home and work better. This will reduce transportation, and this will free up millions and billions of square feet of office space. I mean, look at all the urban cities. At night after 5, they are all empty, ghost towns. And then the same city, there are people sleeping outside. Homeless don't have home to live. I believe the next transformation is going to be in office space. Connectivity is going to have these kinds of impacts that we need to understand. But connectivity is also about democratization, freedom, justice, and inclusion. Unfortunately, today, world over, there is a threat to democracy. Populist governments have taken hold of democracies in many countries, and we know that. Our concerns are US, India, Turkey, Philippines, Hungary. Everyone believes that you need a very strong leader. Everyone believes that justice is being compromised. Media is being compromised. But this is an antithesis to connectivity. And we must design our cities for certain values. And connectivity says democratic values will increase. Freedom will increase. Inclusion will be the key. Today, cities are designed with segregation. And we need more integration of people. Social medias have played an important role in the polarization. Social medias, because of the focus on clicks, promote lies, ridicule people. But I believe this is a transient phenomenon. We'll get over this. So when you look at the connectivity in totality, we realize that education will change completely because the existing model of education was designed 400 years ago, where somebody said it should take 4 years to get a degree. And I'm beginning to question that. Why should it take 4 years? Who decided that? Why is the entire world taking 4 years to get a degree? Why it takes 2 years to get a master's? We need to create education where people become self-learner and learning become a lifelong activity. And as a result, I believe the campus of tomorrow will not look like the campus of today. We need to redesign all our educational institutions. We need to redesign our health systems because health partly is going to be delivered on this. I will be in control of my health, which today I am not. I'm not knowledgeable on health. I don't understand all the issues today, but with this connectivity, I'll be able to get better education on health. Governance is going to change. Vertical silos are going to break. Horizontal organization will be the key. Workspace will change. Banking has already changed. You don't need a physical space for bank. Who goes to bank anymore? You don't need to go to teller. So do you really need banking buildings in the city? Retail is definitely changed because people shop online and more people will shop online, and shopping mall will have a different meaning. Travel is changing. I tell you, before coronavirus, I would go to Miami for a lunch. I will go to New York for a lunch meeting. Now what I do is I tell my colleagues who wants to have lunch with me saying, you get a sandwich in Miami, I'll get a sandwich in Chicago, and we'll both have a lunch. And believe me, it works. Everybody's happy. So I think urban planner will have to understand what does it mean to have connectivity and how do we weave connectivity into planning our urban cities? How do we redo our retail space, our travel, our banking, our government, our work, our education, our health? Everything that I look at today, I believe is obsolete. And we need a whole new thinking. You'll be surprised to learn that golf courses are going out of business because nobody wants to play golf anymore. Golf is played by old people. Young people don't want to play golf. They rather play with their cell phone. What does it mean to have change in gaming industry? How do we plan all of this? At the end, self is becoming the center of your activity. You need to take control. Young believe that they have lost faith in the system. They have lost faith in their leaders. They have lost faith in government. And this has huge implications on urban planning. We need to design new spaces. Those spaces are going to be very different from the spaces we designed in the past. So when urban planner looks at planning today, he still looks at the past. I'm saying let's forget about the past completely. And let's look at how we can redesign urban space, assuming that there is connectivity everywhere. And we need to question every little details. So technology is not about gadgets to really improve productivity of existing transport or existing building. We need to question the basic idea of transport and building. So a lot of our friends talk about, cameras and IoT and all that. I know Arvind ji is going to talk about IoT. But I think that model as it is today is based on what can I do with technology that I do today, but how can I do it better? I would request all our urban planners to say, I don't want to do things the way we have been doing today. I want to do things completely differently with connectivity. And that gives you completely new dimension to urban planning. I can go on and on, but I know I've been given about 20 minutes. I've used most of it. So I want to leave a final thought. Urban planning is not about what it is today. Urban planning requires completely new slate. Urban planning will require focus on sustainability and inclusion. Urban planning will require thinking of redesigning all our institutions, all our public space, to make sure that human interaction increases. There is space in every community, and giving community control of everything. Today, education is in the control of government. I believe education should be turned over to community. Health should be turned over to community. Government should decentralize everything. You need Gandhian model. And that's what COVID-19 has reminded us. And connectivity is in tune with the Gandhian model. Bottom-up development, not top-down. Community involvement in everything. And that requires completely out-of-the-box thinking, radical thinking. And that's the challenge I want to propose to all our urban planners, especially young people. Once again, thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to listening to my colleagues and also more interactions with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pitroda. That was an inspiring talk, and it actually gives us a very good segue into our next speaker, whom is, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Hayon Park, who's the Dean of the School of Advanced Studies in the University of Seoul. Dr. Park holds a PhD from the University of Southern California and has been very much an integral part of the process which Seoul has already begun of what you were saying, which is to use connectivity and community as some of the pillars of their urban planning paradigm. So we, of course, it's also work in progress, but they have done some tremendous things, most notably the way this pandemic was handled, and the economy was able to bring back to itself to, you know, more or less a normal state right now. So with those few words of introduction, over to you, Dr. Park. We can't hear you. Is your mute on?
I think he's...
Sorry. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vijay, for your kind introduction. And I also would like to thank Studio INHAF and the CityNet for having me. And I'm honored to give my talk to distinguished audience, and also to make a presentation with the honorable speakers, Mr. Sam Pitroda and Mr. Arvind Tiwary. Today, as Dr. Vijay introduced, I'm going to talk about the story of Seoul, how the ICT is used in the governance of the urban management. Okay, actually, frankly, I'm not an ICT person. So I selected a few topics, 3 topics actually, that you may be interested in. One is the Korea's response to COVID-19 with the application of ICT. Actually, Korea is evaluated successfully contain the COVID-19 pandemic. And in responding to COVID, there were a lot of ICT was used, including the smartphone apps. And I'm gonna also talk about the impact of transport on urban spatial structure. The Mr. Pitroda already talked about the decentralization of the decision-making, democratization, and also the spatial structure, also the decentralized. I mean, the centrality of the existing central city may be weakened with the progress of technology. In particular, he said that the demonetization of the transport cost, the traditional location theory explains the current location patterns based on the transportation cost. If the transportation goes approach to zero, according to their theory, we can observe the flaccity, all the density in the urban area is flaccity. There is no center. Yeah. So we can discuss and get some implications from that view. And in the last topic, I chose how the Seoul has successfully implemented the bus reform initiatives in 2004, and how important was the ICTs in making that reform happen. Okay. So let me start with COVID-19 story. Okay, this is the snapshot of the current state. Actually, there are more than 22,000 confirmed cases, and the death toll has reached 372. So far, more than about 2.2 million tests were performed, and so out of 2.2 million, 22,000 confirmed cases were found. So the positivity rate is about 1.0%. Okay, so in Korea is evaluated quite a success story in containing the spread of the COVID-19. And ICTs played a vital role in fighting COVID-19 in Korea. Mobile devices in particular and other ICTs were used to support early testing and contact tracing. Testing result and latest information on COVID-19 was made available by a national and local government website. And government provided free smartphone apps, flagged infection hotspots with the text alert on testing and local cases. In addition to the ICTs, in my view, actually, the institutional arrangement is very important in particular in the controlling the emergency situation. Actually, it was in the wake of 2015 MERS outbreak, Middle East respiratory syndrome outbreaks. From the lessons learned from that experience, actually, Korean government developed the institutional arrangement to react to the pandemic in a prompt and urgent ways. I'm going to talk about it afterwards. Okay, let me talk about how the ICT was used in the testing and contact tracing and the social distancing stages. To contain the spread of the pandemic, it is very important to secure fast and accurate diagnostic technology. So only after 3 weeks after the COVID-19 genetic sequence data was released, the first COVID-19 diagnostic reagent was developed and officially approved by the KCDC, headquarters of the disease control and prevention offices. So far, 6 reagents were approved so far. So just 3 weeks was taken to develop and get approvals. It was thanks to the application of the AI-based big data systems by the private companies, actually. And the normal process for approval would have taken 1.5 years. But thanks to the emergency use approval systems of the Korea, the KCDC was authorized to give the approval and to give the license to produce that test kit. And also, the Korea has several AI-assisted diagnostic tools. So AI-driven medical image analysis software developed to read the chest X-ray and the CT scan within 1 minute. Actually, one of that, the diagnostic tool called Medical IP is free for subject to free download, and 1,200 institutions around the world use this the diagnostic tools. Actually, it saves a lot of time, and you can see there were more than 2 million the tests were conducted. These kind of AI-assisted diagnostic tools make it possible to conduct such massive tests. And also, smartphone app was used for the self-quarantine. Actually, all the inbound travelers are mandated to install the self-quarantine safety app. And the safety app trace the whereabouts of the people and report the information to the headquarters office of the KCDC. So those are the several examples of how the ICTs are used for testing. And at the contact tracing, actually, it is much more difficult in my view. Actually, Korea developed epidemiological investigation support systems using ITCs. As I told you, in the wake of the MERS outbreak in 2015, the Korean government revised the Infectious Disease Control and Prevention Act, which authorized KCDC to collect and use mobile GPS data and credit card transaction history of persons. So this figure shows that the KCDC is a director. KCDC director can request that the mobile GPS data to the telecommunication companies via National Police Office. And the KCDC can collect those informations, and using the big data analysis, they can trace how many contacts were made with the confirmed cases and so on. And also, credit card history information can be collected by the law. So the Ministry of Health and Welfare Minister, through the director of the KCDC, request the credit card transaction history information to the credit card companies. So they also analyze such kind of a transaction cost, and they can identify which restaurants they had dinner, had the meals, and which shops they visited, and so on. And they identify the whereabout, the route of the confirmed cases. And also to improve the contact tracing, AI-based call center is running. As I told you, all the inbound travelers are required to install the self-quarantine app, but the people who does not have mobile smartphones are checked, get a call every day from the call center, and the clerks of the call center gives the information just to check the temperature and ask a few questions to the people, and that information is collected and analyzed based on the AI technologies, and the suspected patient, suspected cases are reported to the doctor. And also, QR code-based electronic entry logs are used. The picture here on the right side is an example of the QR code for the entry log. Actually, there are 4 levels of the alert in Korea: attention, caution, warning, and serious. At the level 3, warning, and the level 4, serious stages, the visitors to nightclub, karaoke, indoor gyms are required to provide informations. Actually, there are many apps are used to produce this kind of a QR code, and the shop owners also have the matching application, matching apps, and check the information, identification of the visitors, and send it to the headquarters of the control offices. And also, for the social distancing, ICTs are also used. For example, during the stage of the serious or the warning stages, the many elementary, juniors, and senior high school students, and even the university students have online classes. Actually, though there are 8.4 million students. Online learning management systems of Korea's EBS, Education Broadcasting System, with a user capacity of 6 million can provide the education, actually online lectures. And also the free EBS website, access to the EBS website is guaranteed. Or for the poor, the low-income families, the telecom companies rent more than 300,000 smart tablets to the students. And for the religious services, the drives through religious services conducted with the temporary use of FM band. So the people just sit inside the car and gather the worship services. And another example is face mask distribution information service. Actually, there was a chaos at the early stage of the pandemic because of the shortage of the face masks. Actually, all the people were very concerned and very scared about the coronavirus. So everybody rushed to the pharmacy and the grocery stores to purchase the face masks, which was already out of stock. So the government decided to control the production and distribution of the face masks. And the producer, manufacturer, was allowed to sell the face masks only to the designated retailers. So at the early stage, we could buy just one piece of the face masks a day or so. So there was a long queue on at the front of the pharmacy or the grocery stores. So the government generated data on the sales of the face masks and opened it to the public. So the creation of the apps follows by the private sectors, private companies and the startups develops apps on face masks and disseminate those informations to the public. And we didn't have to wait in the long queue anymore. So as I told you, not only the ICTs, but also the institutional arrangement of the emergency use authorization was a very effective factor to control the spread of the pandemics. So in 2015, because of the MERS COVID coronavirus, there were 186 confirmed cases and 38 people died from it. And the economic loss was estimated about $8.5 billion. So the government understood that emergency response system is a prerequisite to control the spread of infectious disease at the earliest stage of the break. So there was a revision of the laws to allow the fast track approval of the test kit, as I told you, and also in the another law, the infectious disease control and prevention law allows authorize the government to use private information for the public interest. Okay, I have to speed up, sorry. And I'm gonna move to the next issue, the impacts of the transportation on urban spatial structure. Actually, the urban economics sees the urban spatial structure from the location equilibrium perspectives. You can see here in this graph, actually, the vertical axis is the distance from the CBD downtown, and this the vertical axis is the rent for land, monthly rent, for example. Say, as we move further from the CBD, the land rent decreases because of the difference in the accessibility. Actually, it is the traditional view on the urban spatial pattern. So in the urban economic theory explains the difference, say, for example, the location A, which is 5 kilometers away from the downtown, the rent is $15 per month. And here, location B, the 10 kilometers away from the CBD is $10 per month, $5 lower than $15. It is because of the increased transportation cost. So if we move further from the CBD, we have to commute longer distance. So the increased the commuting cost or the transportation cost is compensated by the decreased length. So it is so this line, on this line, it is the equilibrium. Okay, it is view. So in the process of the urbanization, actually rural to urban migrations, the density of the urban areas, in particular in the downtown CBD areas, gets higher because new migrants tend to prefer central areas to outskirts of the city because of the job information, and they tend to be sensitive to travel cost. Actually, the migrants, rural to urban migrants, tend to like live from hand to mouth. So they have to work for their living of the day. So it is very important. And most of them have a kind of unstable job. They have a low job securities. So they have to be they tend to be very sensitive to the network of the job information. So they would like to live nearby the location where the job is created. So informal settlement areas gets bigger and denser in the urban areas. Actually, same in Korea. In the 1960s, there was a lot of squatters. Actually, this the picture shows the slums, informal settlement along the Cheonggyecheon Creek. Actually, this is the creek that runs through the almost the downtown areas. So the government decided to clear this downtown informal settlement by force, and the government forced the migration to a new town 20 kilometers south of the downtown in Gyeonggi province. Actually, this is the map of Seoul and the Seoul metropolitan areas. This is the downtown Seoul, and this is the area location about 20 kilometers from the CBD. They were resettled by force. At the time, there was no appropriate accessibility to the downtown, even though most of them still have to work in the downtown areas. So it is the picture of the place they were relocated. Actually, there is no appropriate infrastructures, no sanitary facilities provided. Just they were like refugee centers, refugee camp. In the 1980s, to cope with congestions in the downtown, many new towns were developed outside of the suburbs. Actually, one of the downtowns here in the yellow areas and the red areas are the new towns. Actually, the areas that were developed in a very massive scales. So this shows that, at that time, the appropriate transportation, in particular, the metro was provided. Any of you have ever visited Seoul, you may have been impressed by the good the metro services. Actually, I think we have one of the best the metro services. And in the 1980s, Korean government actually could afford the infrastructure, appropriate infrastructure services, and make the spontaneous change of the urban spatial patterns by providing the appropriate infrastructure, infrastructures. Actually, by providing the good transport infrastructure, in particular the good metro services, it makes the transportation cost, it lowers the transportation cost. Also, as Mr. Pitroda said, if the transportation cost goes zero, theoretically, actually, the bid rent curve gets almost flattens like this. Yeah, almost the slope gets zero, not a negative slope, but zero. Anyway, the technology progress have a drive to push down the density in the downtown. So the people who reside in the central area may have an incentive to go outside. So if you don't have to commute to the downtown, if you commute every 6 months, there is no reason to find your house close to the downtown. Okay. I'm sorry, Dr. Vijay, can I have 3 or 4 minutes?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my last topic is Seoul's bus reform with the application of the ICT. Actually, the provision of the appropriate level of the public transport service is a very critical factor in framing, shaping the urban patterns. Because without the appropriate public transport, everybody, in particular, the low-income people, tend to concentrate in the downtown areas. They tend to be more sensitive to the transportation cost. And as I told you, they also would like to stay close to the job creation centers, and they would like to be alert. They would like to inform about the new job opportunities as early as possible, because they tend to be employed with a very low job securities. So provision of the appropriate the public transport service is very critical part of the urban planning. And the metro is much more expensive than the bus services. So in case of Korea, actually, we have a very serious traffic congestion problems in the 1980s, thanks to the rapid motorization. Actually, the vehicle ownership in Seoul has increased by 6 times over the 1980s. For 10 years, actually, the vehicle ownership, number of vehicles has increased by six times. So, and it is the period that the Seoul metropolitan government expanded its very nice the metro networks. So there was a serious road congestions, and the bus operators had to compete with the metro services. So there was a decrease in the ridership of the buses, and also it resulted in the decrease in revenue. So it lowered the service qualities, and also it decreased again the bus ridership. So there was a vicious circle of the bus problem. So in 1997, Seoul metropolitan government developed a comprehensive bus reform roadmap, but it was not successfully implemented. One of the main the implementation challenge was the lack of the transparency about the financial status of the individual bus route. Actually, one of the key components of this bus reform initiative was the reshuffling the bus route systems. They would like to develop the most the effective bus networks, and the government was ready to provide some financial support to get the reform initiative done. But there is no reliable financial data, because at that time, most of the fare was collected in cash or bus tokens. Actually, the leakage of the fare box revenue was a very critical issue, and it was a critical challenge in introducing the reform initiatives, because the government wanted to find a very transparent ground to justify the government support on the private operators. Actually, all the buses in Seoul are operated by the private operators. So it was after 7 years that we could observe the bus reform happens. So in 2004, thanks to the ICTs, the bus reform could have been conducted. Actually, the bus information service was provided by the TOPIS, which is the headquarters that controls and oversees the citywide the transportation systems on a real-time and on-spot information-based analysis. And introduction of the smart card or T-money made it possible to collect information about the financial revenue of the individual bus route. And integrated and distance-based fare system increased the passenger satisfaction and ridership of the public transport. Actually, it was made possible because of the ICT technology, like a smart card and the T-money card and so on. Okay, let me skip the slide. And also, the big data analysis was used to develop the night bus route design. Actually, Seoul is one of the most dynamic cities. You can find any restaurants 24 hours a day, midnight, you can find any restaurant because all the people in Korea are working overnight. So there were high demand on the public transport even after the midnight. So Seoul developed the route by analyzing the card transaction history data, and they used that big data to develop the origin destination metrics of to analyze the travel patterns. So let me close. Okay, ITCs plays especially mobile devices has transformed life in cities. Through the mobile phone, individuals can both receive information about their surroundings through location-based services and also contribute to a city as a system. Actually, every individual can interact with the city. In doing so, actually, the role of the planner, urban planner, should be changed. Actually, the urban planning is based on the notion that the people at the center who have the easiest accessibility or the advantage of the accessibility of the information have in a better position to plan the city. But if everybody can interact and collect the transparent informations, then everybody can contribute to the planning. And ICTs expands the set of viable policy options, making the policy implementation more viable and effective, as we saw in the case of the COVID-19 response of the Korean government and the bus reforms. And they can alter both our experience of and behavior in cities and eventually have impacts on urban spatial pattern, making a city more dispersed or even ubiquitous. So homogeneous spatial patterns. Okay, let me stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Park. That was an excellent exposition. And to me, what was really interesting about it was you gave some key factors which sort of complement what Mr. Pitroda was saying. That yes, connectivity is very important and that we are all getting connected through the mobile revolution. But getting the community also totally engaged in the process is equally important.
Right.
But what Korea did so effectively was it was mediated through the use of data
Right.
in a way that even politicians, and just for our audience in India, the politicians in Korea, just like in India, are driven by the same incentives of the political cycle. But the difference was that they were willing to trust and accept the fact that big data analyzed by professionals would actually help them in their own, whatever their political agenda was. Now, this brings me to a point which I hope, Arvind, you can help us answer, which is that how do we really bring about this kind of a mediation? You heard these two very interesting concepts, but the reality of how exactly we bring about the mediation has been something which has been puzzling. And in fact, we are also getting some questions from our audience saying that, yes, in India, the problem is that, you know, the folks who are dealing with ICT are a small group and they really don't care about the poor and so on. So let me now turn to you and very briefly for the audience introduce you as someone who's done a lot of very interesting work on entrepreneurship as well as on the technology side. You also head the TIE in India and also involved in the Smart City program. With your 35 plus years of experience in industry and your very impressive academic record being from IIT, IIM, and from Wharton School of Business, I'm sure you have a lot of insights to offer. And being the third speaker and really bringing up I hope you will help us in tying these things together, because the earlier two speakers, I think, were pretty complementary to each other in what they had to say. But we are still left with this problem, which Mr. Pitroda referred to, which is that at the end of the day, if you can't get all your verticals into much more of a horizontal relationship, and also, as Mr. Park was saying, rethink the city, in a situation where, you know, like in India and Korea, also local politicians are into all kinds of interference with the planning process and so on, because high rents in the central part of the city also means high donations to political parties. How can technology help us really improve the governance based on what you've heard so far and your own experience? Over to you.
Thank you. I am sharing my screen. You should see it. I will need about 24 minutes to be able to tie up all of this, and I need your patience. It's been a long session. And I must thank Kirti and Hari and INHAF for inviting me over. Sam has covered the broader area, which is about decentralization, the democratization, and the fact that a lot of services are going to become free, which is the topic I pick up. And that's my major theme. And Professor Park has also covered very nicely. Seoul is a very industrialized city. And the traffic problem that he described is a genuine problem even for India. And he also talked about how the city becomes flatter as the transportation and mobile thing comes down, which are also factors I will speak to. Kirti gave me this requirement to cover a range of topics, productive to economic, just to social. It's really tough. Adaptive to technology, etc., like the Millennium Development Fund, for a country which doesn't have much money or the management capability to do much. So this requires you to think differently. You cannot do it the way an advanced economy like Europe or South Korea will do it, and I will cover that. I am going to ask you to think if in a very disruptive way, when Sam mentioned about a disruption. So, and you need to look at a new glass to hear me. The connections are very, very wide and deep. So we know matters exists as solid, liquid, gas. Now you can analyze electron Brownian motion, but that doesn't give you much insight. It is much easier to think of phases. So you have a gel and you have an aerosol. And you have something called a DNA, which interestingly for those of you is an aperiodic crystal. It's a crystal, but it's aperiodic. And this gives you strange properties which solve a lot of problems, and that is where string theory comes from. So I am suggesting change your spectacles, stop seeing this peacock, which you're used to, you're very comfortable, start seeing something else, which will be disconcerting, but it is going to make it more fun. And I have a quote. This is Instagram in US. A lot of astrology topics are going there. And there is this guy who says, okay, then again, maybe the world is so messed up because Mercury is in retrograde and Donald Trump is a Gemini. So there are a lot of people who have a problem coming to terms with the way the world is behaving. Now, the world is not running to specs, and we will talk about that. But the important thing I want to come across is a word called consilience, and this is the author, and it's about the intelligence of ants, which is the arc of technology. If you look for the last 20 years of internet, it is about decentralization, empowerment of individuals, and tremendous power. Individuals can be citizen journalists. Individuals can influence a TikTok 15 minutes viral thing can go millions. So the entire thing has changed, and this is the forces of convergence. So we have a lot of consumerization, a lot of democracy, digitization, but politicians are fighting back. The political system wants control, but technology is bringing a lot of democratization, which Sam mentioned. What is a city? What is smartness? There's an interesting webinar I looked, and which is the core point, and which is about inclusiveness and equity, how to connect the migrants and all that. And technology must help them. It shouldn't become tools for making it easier for the powerful people to control. Now, cities can be defined in many ways. Operationally, the municipal corporations define. Most Indian cities exceed that. Like Bangalore, it's much beyond. Chandigarh, much beyond. So cities exist beyond municipal boundaries, and urbanization is peri-urban, rural, urban. To me, it's all there because it's economic activity. Planned cities like New Delhi, Chandigarh, and New Raipur are very rare. And I was involved with Smart City Mission. You really can't have innovative solutions with an L1 tender. I mean, it is just not possible. There are 84 applications, 11 clusters, and there are a lot of issues in the way you run Smart City, and we will talk about this. The basic idea is you cannot do top-down European technology. You don't have the money and the management. China has spent 300 billion. We have just 3 billion. We have to grow vertically. Horizontal sprawl takes away land, agriculture, difficult to manage, and that is the core thesis. This is just to give an example of how we have to think at different scales. We can't do megapolis. We are not like China. I can't build a new basic, new city, charter city, census towns. We don't have enough resources. So we have to look at different ways of funding, which I will speak about. But the core is this connection, that if we can live closely, 15-minute cities, as Singapore does, or I call it vertical villages. If a city is a set of villages, which is what it is, Noida and Gurgaon, or Whitefield and Electronic City in Bangalore, these are vertical villages, hopefully. And you reduce the mobility, then a lot of these things can be managed. You should remember that Bharat grows and expands at a rate which is difficult. You cannot plan cities if it is growing at 10 to 12% a year. And you don't have a local mayor who is actually in command. Unlike London or unlike other cities, the chief minister of Delhi has very little control on the city of Delhi. And the same is true in Bangalore. It's a sustainably is a wicked problem, and therefore we need to look at 15 minutes of fame and different ways of doing it. So shape from the bottom, urban villages. Hong Kong is a good example. The central business district in Hong Kong is very, very dense, but they have used escalators and walkways. So you can walk from most large buildings to others without touching the street, covered up. You also have escalators taking you up to the peak. So a lot of people stay up in the hills. You can drive, there is a tram, but it's much more easier. There are 4 lanes of escalators which bring people down in the morning and they take up down. So there are different ways of reducing mobility and reducing energy and doing it. I'll take an example of parking, which is very relevant. And for Delhi, this is the major thing. And I helped the Urban Smart City Mission to develop the RFP phase. It's important to understand that we tend to go into a very narrow one city, one election, one card, one way, and that doesn't work. There has to be a lot of scenarios. So for example, parking, is it only for 4-wheelers or 2-wheelers also? What about ambulances that need to park once in a while? What about heavy usage due to a festival or an IPL match, when you may want to bring in off-street parking, etc. to do? What about integrating private and public in apps so you can book tickets across that? And can you do pricing flexibility? You cannot manage overload surge unless you do surge pricing. These are things the bureaucratic system cannot handle. They want one rule for everything, and that is a problem that has to go. And a lot about technology is segmentation, voluntary taxation. People will pay more for services they value. And that is what Alibaba or Tencent or Amazon, etc. have shown. And that is where we need to go. Let me give an example between Hong Kong and Singapore. And if you have lived in both, they are a city of contrast. One is a normative city, very fine city. You get fined for things, very disciplined, very controlled. And one is an emergent city. Hardly anything works the way you think. The interesting thing is that police is very visible in Hong Kong. You rarely see them in Singapore. You have housing, HDB, UDB, this is a government subsidized fund, housing, and it's lease. Most housing in Singapore is on lease, freehold is poor. Hong Kong, you have enormous density. Bangkok, if you ever go, you should. It is so dense that skyscrapers go over, sunlight will hit the street only for about 10 minutes at noon. Otherwise, there is no sun. It is a very dense area. You have Discovery Way, which is a ferry across. It's an urban neighborhood. It's like a bay, a lot of area. The important thing is there is tram, there is ferry. But interesting, I would like to give an example, picking up on Professor Park's transportation issue, is there used to be 3 buses. I haven't been to Hong Kong for some years, so I really don't know. But there's a blue bus, which is a traditional bus, fixed schedule, fixed bus stops, and a fixed fare. And you pay based on a distance. You enter a place, how many stages you have to go, you pay on that, which is a normal thing. Then there are red buses. Red buses are more during peak period. They are smaller. Their fares are a little higher, but they don't start at a schedule. They wait till there's enough people sitting in, and then they go off. So it handles peak load, and it is very efficient, and it goes from specific clusters of G. The most interesting is the green bus. These are small. They work during off-peak hours. There are localities like the shopping area or the vegetable shopping area or near the gym area or clusters. They wait till enough people coming. They have fixed points of origin and destination, but in between they will go everywhere because in Hong Kong it's very hilly. So if the regular bus stop is about 300 meters from your house and you have a lot of shopping bag, you will puff and huff with carrying your bag up a steep curve. So very difficult. So you tell this bus driver, us gully mein, just take a detour into that gully and you drop me closer, and he will, normally it's just about 7 or 8 rupees extra for a detour up to about 500 meters, and they're very efficient. So this is the segmentation I'm talking about. This is before big data. This is 15 years old. But segmentation for different services for different clients is the way to appropriately meet these things. One of the things we miss is how much the world is changing. I am in part of some committees at the DOT, etc. They refuse to understand that cellular network will not be the future. Private networks are taking over. 4G, LTE, 5G is happening, plus near-Earth satellites are taking over. 22 startups are doing it. There are 4 in India. Amazon is doing it, and they provide 1 megabit. And there is already an Australian startup in place for $2 a year. Any IoT device can connect to the satellite once a day and transmit solutions. So anywhere in the world, you have connectivity. And this will happen. So this completely changes the way you think about, and this is very low cost, almost free, as Sam says. So you have to change and think differently about your do. Let me quickly move to air pollution to explain the impact of bottom-up thinking, which is my main theme, of emergence rather than planned top-down. India is unique. We have a lot of cities in the top 10. This is not the criteria you want to win on the global bottom. We have. Now, interestingly, and this is a project we are running in Canada, Usuru, which is the Kannada word for breath, air pollution, and there is a website. So PM 2.5, which is what matters, it varies a lot. In my home, it goes up by 55% every day. That's a very volatile thing. If the stock market goes by 30%, there's chaos, there's red line, there's news. But air pollution varies a lot every day. And in Delhi, there is Diwali, and the Supreme Court has an opinion, but only 2 days it makes a difference. Otherwise, it's back to normal. It's very, very polluted in seasons. So In Patna, which Vijay and we were talking about, the central regulatory measurement instrument, which is about a $300,000 instruments and 10 feet, reports a 600% variation between summers. So how do you manage such volatile situation which affects health? And therefore, you have to think of very low cost, thousands of measurements, every 400 meters air quality is different. The average doesn't matter. The river may have an average depth of 2 meters, but you can still die by one place which is 10 meters deep. So the air pollution is local, you have to measure locally, and therefore it needs a different way of solution. The important issue is how do you solve it? You can't wait for the government to change the law, for diesel cars to be removed, for coal-fired stations to be shut down, not happening. I mean, Mr. Trump wants it, China is still doing it. So all and renewable energy, etc., is not going to happen. So what do you do for your city, for your neighborhood, for your hospital, for your school? You don't want children not to play. That is a very large part. So there are other alternatives, nanofilters, urban forest, and this is the Japanese method. It just takes about 3 years. About half an acre is equivalent to 50 tons of air conditioner. This is an interesting city green. It's there in London. It's there in Germany. It's pretty effective. Biotechnology. It produces about 200 tons of air conditioner. So about 500 circle of 500 meters will become very efficient. So these are solutions we have to do. The primary thing is the market will solve it. You don't need government regulation. Create an environment for people to try in the small. Market will solve the problem. Now, let me turn to the main thing. I went very fast with some examples. So now let me slow down a little bit. And this is the large thing. And this leans on the point that Sam mentioned and Vijay asked. The world is not running to specifications. There are Nobel Prize economists who keep talking about inflation. It's not going to happen. I am not going to see inflation in my life. It is deflation. So the important thing to understand is that Marx is no longer correct. Politics trumps economics. Sam mentioned it. This is a fact of life. Most popular leaders are authoritarian and they're mucking up their economy right now or in the future, but they will not get hurt. Economics is irrelevant to the politics we are living in. And that is part due to the fragmentation. The rate of change of technology has been so high that people are clinging back to fundamentals. They want to stick to traditions, to some things which will give them. And that is what is happening to the US judiciary. Textualism is important. So gun control law is written 150 years ago. Gun control will remain, even though it has very negative consequences, etc. Let me go back to what I call the Ajanta moment. For those who are not from India, it's a painting. It's near Mumbai. This is a cave. They're very ancient paintings, hand-drawn, very, very beautiful and amazing creativity. But the important thing is there's no name. The artist is not there. The artists thought it was an act of divinity. It was the gods speaking through them. So they did not think they are the authors or the creative owners of the art. They thought they're expressing cosmic dance. Of course, open source is not about cosmic dance, but the idea is similar. There is no ownership of open source. It's a community good, it is used. The important thing to understand that it is used in big data and AI ML a lot. So hugely market cap, large-wise, Alibaba, Amazon, Tencent, Facebook, Google, Baidu, they all depend upon the open source. They don't have a technology mode. It's something that young graduates can learn in 3 months and 4 months, and a lot of startups produce it. And Professor Park mentioned about AI ML. It does amazing things, but it's all open source. The cathedral has lost, the bazaar has won. Now, politically, this is a problem. They want the cathedral, but in the internet, in the technology world, it is the bazaar that has winning. This has created what Sam mentioned, a great decrease in cost of service. Telecom is almost free. Transportation will become free. A lot of things are becoming free. So the cost of services is going down. So there's not going to be inflation. And because of liquidity, which is pumped in by the central banks, you have asset inflation of the stock market. There is no inflation of goods and services. The German bond went to minus 0.5% day before yesterday. Negative debt from the government. 2 trillion negative debt from large companies. We are an amazing world. Negative debt of this size means that the world is very different. Please change your spec, see it differently. Let me talk about Linux. Sorry. Linux is the thing used in the open source thing. It runs your set-top box, TV set-top box, most of your phones are various. Android is a variation of Linux. So it runs a lot of devices, IoT, etc. It's about 1994. It's 4,000 volunteers. It's not an organization which it's not centralized. There are about 82,000 changes made by 4,000 people, and it is managed through a tool set called Git. And which is the main point I'm trying to bring, that infrastructure, a technology platform can remove the need for bureaucracy, legislation, judiciary, and all that. And it can deliver enormous value efficiently. The internet is a technology platform. Amazon, Google, Facebook, all run technology platforms which provide tremendous scale. Linux Foundation, unfortunately, was called evil, Balmer. I met Mr. Balmer. I was running a large project in Hong Kong. Microsoft needed, they flew me. I met him in Seattle. He calls it evil. But now the world has changed. They are a platinum sponsor. IBM is a sponsor. India is the 10th largest. So this is a very different model of Bollywood, of talent, project, and mission than the organizational model we are used to. Let me come to the main point which I want to reach, and I call it a perpetual deficit finance for-profit company. And I will explain. A few weeks before a young guy, Mark Zuckerberg, went for IPO, and without telling his board, he bought a company called WhatsApp, and he paid $8 billion for it. $8 billion for something which doesn't turn any revenue. Even today, WhatsApp doesn't turn any revenue. But was he brilliant? Yes. India runs on chai and WhatsApp. Our politicians depend on WhatsApp. We have 300 million users on WhatsApp. About 90 times a day, people look at WhatsApp. So consumers need not pay the full cost of a service. If you take Google, you take Amazon, Amazon provides you subsidized cost, Flipkart or Ola. There is a world in which capital is paying much more subsidies than governments have ever paid. And this is progressive taxation. Of course, they make profit, either through ads or some premium service which is paid. So freemium is free. And there are extra services for which people pay. And this is working through digital trace. If 700 million users produce 90 hits a day, the social statistic is social physics. Similar statistics as in quantum mechanics starts operating. You can cluster. Yeah? We are very predictable as clusters. And therefore, these companies can remain deficit financed in the sense that the consumers are not paying the full cost in perpetuity. If the government in India can borrow in perpetuity, companies can borrow in perpetuity. And the light currency replaces fiat currency. A 15 minutes fame in TikTok can be very addictive, and we know TikTok is very addictive. So let me turn then to the large idea that the public distribution system is not the government. And I will take China as an example. You may have heard of Alibaba, which is actually larger than Amazon in terms of volume, but Tencent also is very large, and they have invested a lot in India, and they are very much into gaming and WeChat. Between 700 to 1.1 billion users a day, 4 to 6 hours a day, 70 to 90% market share. They're the largest financial payment system in the world. Alibaba did 25 billion packages last year. In June 1 to 18, in China, they did, and this is not Alibaba, this is the whole e-commerce, Pinduoduo and all these things. 26 billion parcels were shipped. This is not the government of China. These are private operators. And they are doing it at a scale, at a cost, and at a speed unimaginable. Within 4 hours, within next day, they can predict what you will order, and at a cost which you cannot match. As Sam said, demonetization, free services is happening. Why is it happening? And that is what we have to understand, a paradox. Conventional management theory tells you that there are 3 levels of value. So you had Casio, which does product differentiation. You had 25 types of watches, 7 types of calculators, radios, a lot of variations, and different people bought for different things. You have companies which do operational excellence. Indian IT and BPO, they divide CMM level 5, high quality, low defect rates, operational excellence, and you have value leadership, very low cost, so Walmart or $1 shop. Typically, you can't do both. You can't have 7,000 products and have the lowest cost and operational excellence. Very difficult, something goes wrong. But that is what Amazon is doing. That is what Alibaba is doing. That is what Tencent is doing. And that is because of the infrastructure as a service. There is a technology layer, big data, AI, ML, and the business model requires a lot of users and a lot of engagement. So it feeds in the loop. There are negative consequences, and Sam mentioned there are a lot of misuse of the data, privacy, but it will go away. As we learn more, regulation will come. And Linux is a good example. It's used by everyone, but it's for free, and there is no misuse of that. So an open source platform, a Linux for the urban city will make a big difference. So let me come towards the closing area of how we can take benefit. And as mentioned by Sam and Professor, we are an economy of affluence. We have enough production capacity. We have 60 tons of food rotting in the Food Corporation of India. Our problem is distribution, not production. We have 100 TV channels. So we have an economy of affluence. And therefore, people are not working on the textbook economics of resource allocation. It's affinity, it's emotion, it's identity and brand awareness and this thing. So some of you may not be aware, Zoho is a software company, Sridhar Vembu is in Chennai. And this is an example of what happens from affluence. And this is very much true for technology startups in Bangalore, feed forward. We want to help the next generation. It's not philanthropy in the sense we're giving money. We give them insight, we give them help, and we try to decentralize. He's trying to take a lot of e-business, BPO, to the villages. And this will happen. There are a lot of people doing it. What a sort of an example will help. We are used to langas. The Sikhs run this in Gurdwara and they give food. Steve Jobs talks about it. He used to go to Gurdwara to eat good food because he had no money while he was at Stanford in between. And even during the Gharbandi, that is the lockdown that happened in India, Delhi Gurdwaras fed more people than the government ever fed. This is local. This is private. This is crowdfunding, local participation. Dhan Foundation, one of my friends from IIM runs this, lakhs of people in South. He teaches them school about 15 years, and this is an NGO. And there are a lot of NGOs doing a lot of private works. And there's an industrial scale Akshay Patra. If you are not aware, you do it. Millions of people are fed. For 5,000 bucks, they will feed 5,000 rupees. They will feed 5 people for a whole year at a very good value for money. So this is the sort of thing that needs to be understood. Social status and gifting is the primary motivator for this, and social alpha and ugly. Social alpha is a Tata Trust thing, and ugly Indian is a group which takes up streets and cleans up. In Bangalore, they do it. They paint it, they clean up the city, they make it there. There's a lot of ground-up solution handling this and the global alliance, and you should understand that the world is not working the way you think. Typically in art and culture, the avant-garde, the French have this, they start doing something, then the more connected people do it, and then the more mass affluence comes, and then more. That's not the way the world is changing. TikTok did not start with the avant-garde. It started with tier 3, India 3, the drivers. And it did not even start with English-speaking people. 15 minutes of fame, the viral video. And it has taken over. Today, it is giving Instagram and Vanity and the fashion industry a run for the money. There's a lot of fear people have for various reasons. But it's like WhatsApp, massive adoption if it meets a need. And the need is social likes. We are talking about social capital. People are status-seeking monkeys. And that is what drives the world. So to Kirti, my suggestion is, if you want all those things you mentioned, equity, participation, etc., your model is clone the internet, not the office. A technology platform which is participative, which is democratic, which is culturally vibrant, which provides it for free, and which has scale. It has transformed everything in the world. Sam talked about his phone. It's the internet. It's a device. And clone the internet. And the medium is the message. If YouTube is the largest source of news, if TikTok and Facebook, that is how politics and economic institutions and laws will phrase. And iterate. Iteration is very important. Many of you may not know, Amazon does 64,000 variations on a product page, the photo, the size, the font, the photo. So you can match many segments. Do not think of one rule for everyone. It should be voluntary taxation. This is from The Economist. How technology can help. Ultimately, it's a political process. There is nothing like economics without politics. It's a political economy. There are some trade-offs, there are some winners, some losing. We have to make politics better by technology, and there are several set of issues. The important, and there is a UK governor who says, why should you take years to get feedback and modify public policy? And that's the whole point, being agile, being experimental, because things don't work. The arc of technology is Web 1 to Web 3. Decentralized, peer-to-peer, vocal, blockchain is coming, trust is getting emergent order from chaos. That is the way to look at it. So what do I suggest? I'm suggesting emergent, resurgent urban Bharat. Now, working from home, COVID, 6 months or whatever, it completely changes the importance of city centers, as Sam mentioned. Half of them are not used after 5 p.m. And I have been in Shanghai, and it is a ghost town after some time, all these places. But you can be reused. You can run malls, you can reuse for housing. So the Singapore model, or what in Paris they call 15 minutes work-life cluster. So you work in areas where residential, malls, manufacturing, distribution are in vertical villages. And that reduces, and 3D printing, manufacturing, communication can happen. That reduces trillions of dollars in hard assets. You don't need to build a lot of mobile. You don't need to take a lot of space for highways, for 8-lane highways and traffic jam and all that. You don't need a traffic jam going to the Everest. You can do it in various ways. So this is future shock. It is happening now. Future shock is not something that happens now. Bits and parts of it are already in future shock. I'll give you an example. I come from Ranchi. There is a cricketer called Mahendra Singh Dhoni, and he just retired, and his retirement video was also a class act. He is untrained. He was not taught or tutored on the techniques of cricket. His batting shot are absolutely different. His helicopter shot was learned from the streets. But he blasted his way. Similarly, IPL, Indian cricket, it's $1 billion business coming out of Calcutta, coming and profitable. And it's completely changed the way, and it's nothing to do with nation states. It's city by city cricket team. So all I'm saying is, and TikTok celebrities, the world is moving away. The government is not the 800-pound gorilla that we think about. It's actually quite irrelevant. Get on with business, peer-to-peer, clusters and tribes and communities can solve the problem. Experimentation is the thing. We want the government to let go of regulation and experimentation. So why can't an ugly Indian bid and take over a block and do it well? So forget the government, forget the tender, forget the different things, nano projects. And you should have an ITO, BPO backbone to support. So we have proposed that the street light should not be owned by the electric utilities, but can be part of the city. Then you can build sensors, so air pollution, sensors for proximity, and you can give it to NGOs. So certain areas they want to measure something else, they can put it. So the street light is a central nervous system of a smart city, and it's a public property. You can change a lot. Of course, the urban local body in India needs to have a mayor. And this will happen. And people tell me politicians never give control, but it will happen. I come from a state called Bihar, which is actually quite bad. And there was a very popular leader called Lalu Yadav, but he agreed to split. For some reasons, he agreed to split. So Jharkhand was formed. So 50% of the population lives in urban areas in India. It's a myth that India lives in villages. It no longer does. And 80% of GDP comes from urban areas. So if urban growth does not happen, we will have the French Revolution. So politicians have to let go. They have to let cities take charge and become one. It will happen. And therefore the sharing economy, India 3, India 2, all this will happen. Let me come on a slightly philosophical note. I don't know how many of you are aware, but we cannot make it people-centric as long as we measure in terms of ROI and money. Kirti talked about people-centric. People-centric will only happen if we move away from a mass quantity to individuals. The biggest criteria in today's world is joy and beauty. And this is MC Escher. These are things of beauty, and they create joy, and we pay. What do we earn money for? For joy, for a retired life, sit on a Hawaiian beach and sip beer. You can get it now. And this is my favorite sculpture. In The Hague, apart from the Justice Court, there is this museum. This is a very interesting diagram. Who is the creator and who is created? It's a heterarchy. We create the world we are living in. The environment is not a constraint. We can change it. And the internet, and it shows citizen democracy, blockchain, all that. So this is a poem. This is a very old poem. I call it Fractal Physics. You can see the world in a grain of sand. And that is what cosmology is. What happens in a nanosecond inside the atom. You have electrons, protons, then quarks and charms. What happens there controls what happens 10 billion years later and at cosmological scale of trillions of light years. So the world in a grain of sand. A heaven in a wildflower. Chaos is good. Vibrant culture will not happen in a Ram Rajya. We need a Krishna Leela. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand. An eternity in an hour. If you are enjoying life, a day is enough. And that is what in Hindu mythology, Brahma's call is 5,000 years, a fraction of a second, it is long enough. So I would suggest that we need to start rethinking what are we trying to work. It's joy and it's emergent. So to come back to the chapter that Kirti gave me, we can do all this. But we can't do it a Ram Raj. It's too controlling, it's too top down, it's two guys in Delhi cannot give me the Ranga Leela, the vibrant things we want. I am done. Vijay, you are muted.
Sorry.
Vijay, you are still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. So we have about less than 15 minutes left, and we've received several questions. But there was one theme which came across among many of, really there were two themes. So let me bring this up and request Sam to comment on them. One is that, as you were mentioning, yes, the world is getting connected, but the future of work with the fourth industrial revolution is something very different from what we have seen in the past. And for countries like India, where you've got lots of people who have not had the proper education and they've come to the city to earn as a chai wala or as, thela wala or whatever, there's a real problem, because even with connectivity, how exactly are you going to get them into, to all the dreamy things which Arvind was talking about, which is really far out of their reach. The second thing, which also many have been asking, is why is it that in India we can't do the kind of, what is a political economy solution in India for what Korea did, which is basically for politicians to accept the fact that when you get connectivity, you get big data. With big data, you can get really, analytics. And as Arvind was pointing out, this is what companies like Amazon and others are using effectively for business. Why can't a politician begin to understand that with this, you can do all the kinds of reforms which you and Dr. Park were talking about? So these are two questions for you, if you could kindly respond.
Thank you. First of all, I really want to compliment my colleagues. I think they both did a superb job. Dr. Park and Arvind Tiwary, thank you very much for your presentations. I would like to answer these two questions very differently. Okay, first, let's take a question on India. People of India will have to decide what kind of a country they want to build. The idea of India that our founding fathers had was rooted in democracy, freedom, inclusion, diversity, love. The India that we are seeing today is full of hate, not truth but lies, not trust but mistrust, vindictive politics, and control. So until people of India decide what is that they want, politicians will not change. Don't expect them to say, Seoul did well, so I can also use this technology. Their equation is very different. If their equation was to do good to public, they would not be doing what they are doing today. So let's be very clear. That's one. Second, and which is a larger question, I'm just finishing a book on redesigning the world. World was last designed after World War II, led by US, which gave birth to UN, World Bank, NATO, WTO, IMF, GDP, GNP. That world was based on 5 basic ideas: democracy, human rights, capitalism, consumption, and military. That world did pretty well for 70 years. In 70 years, we have not designed any new global institution. We are basically tweaking. But that design is obsolete. We need a new design of the world. No matter what Arvind and Dr. Park and I and Vivek and Kirti say, until we change that design, you'll make only incremental change. We need totally new thinking where GDP is not the measure, where governments cannot be structured the way these governments are structured. Vertical silos, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Defense, don't make sense. You need new paradigm which is focused on inclusion, regenerative economy, human needs, not human rights, not consumption, conservation, and not military but non-violence. Why don't we have a Ministry of Non-Violence? Why don't we have a Ministry of Inclusion? I think these are complex issues. And unless and until we have a broader global conversation on these issues, going back to the design we had 70 years ago is not going to do anything. All politicians are tuned into their control. It's command and control. It is not about collaboration, cooperation, communication. It is not about public good. It is not about sacrifice. It is not about selfless approach to problem solving. You need Gandhian approach today. You need bottom-up development. You need focus on agriculture in India. You need decentralization. You need to turn over to community all your institutions. So they decide on the teacher and not some guy sitting in Delhi decide on the teacher's salary. Everything has fallen apart. Nothing is working except few people sucking the system. And they are sucking more and more. As a result, world over, there is inequality. Very few people have lots of wealth and lots of people are poor. And we give this label of socialist, communist, capitalist. All these labels don't mean anything. You need to focus on humanity. You need to focus on public good. You need to lift everybody at the cost of lifting few down. And you need to really go back to fundamentals, focus on 2 things: planet and people, sustainability and inclusion. Very complex, but very simple.
Thank you, Sam. Let me turn to Dr. Park. Any closing comments from you?
Okay. Actually, I got one question about the privacy issues in applying the ICT and using the big data issue. Actually, it is a very critical issue. As I mentioned, authorizing the government to collect and use the private information is very effective way to to respond to the emergency situation. But as somebody mentioned, actually there is a risk of a violation of the privacy. Actually, there is some safeguard to protect the private information. For example, for the information collected for the trace, the contact, the information should be collected at the minimum level, say like name, telephone number, and the time of the entrance of the location, and the information should be encrypted and decentralized in the storage. And the data should be deleted after 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, usually the COVID, the symptom is it takes about two weeks that the COVID symptom is in appears. So to double the period of the COVID potential period, the data should be deleted. So there is such kind of safeguard policies to protect the privacy, but actually there is a growing concern about the privacy protection issues in applying the ICT, and in particular the using the big data. And I think it is also related to the democracy issues or decentralization issues. Actually, one of the important the political debate at the moment in Korea is, you may know that the current government, actually the current government got the power thanks to we call it the candle revolution. Actually, many people, millions of people protest against the governance of the previous president. So this government actually encouraged such kind of direct participation of the people in the politics. But the constitution in Korea actually is supported representative democracy. So sometimes there is a conflict between the candle revolution and the representative democracy, and there is a danger that the direct participation in the politics of the individual have some risk of increasing the populist agenda. If everything is decided based on the e-votings or the opinions in the internet, SNS, and so on. So sometimes it can lead to not the desirable or optimum result, even though it may look democratic. So there is a debate. So decentralization through the technology progress is a good thing, but still there is some risk. And if the direct participation of all the people may result in totalitarian drive, so there is some concerns.
Thank you, Dr. Park. Let me give Arvind the last word. We have reached the end of our session, so please, let's try and be brief on that.
Okay, thanks. Now, I wanted to cover 3 points quickly. First of all, there is some question in the chat about blockchain in India. There are projects going on, and there are 7 states. Land control, land thing is being done, Goa, Tamil Nadu, etc. And those are certain things. Coming back to privacy, and Professor Park talked about it, I also had IIT, which is the European, which is the UK institution of, I had the cybersecurity team there, IoT Open Center, and we have a position paper. All I will say to you is privacy is a myth. The legal definition of privacy that you used to is not going to happen in the future. In a connected world, New York Times has published where the president of the US was there every 10 minutes. Even he is not safe. So this is a mythical notion. Just get used to the world that there is no privacy in a digital trace that we live in. Get used to it. Coming back to the larger question, how will the politicians change? I am not so negative as Sam was. I'm actually quite positive that a lot of good changes are happening. Yes, Sagar Manthan, in Hindi we call Sagar Manthan. When the churning of the ocean happens, you see a lot of poison up front. We are seeing that. But a lot of Amrit, or the good things will also come. And we'll get used to it. When the printing press was first introduced, Gutenberg, the Catholic Church got upset because broadsheets, purple sheets, the official Bible was never discussed. The pubs, etc., took over. That's happened in the US also. And people settled down. So that's what's happening. A lot of purple sheet, fake news, all that thing is happening. It will settle down. It will come down. But there is one important reason why we should be extremely positive that change will come and power will continue. It's the existential problem of external shock. So China has had a huge external shock and is now trying to grow domestic businesses. Cities have been given much more freedom. You may be amazed at how much freedom cities have. Shenzhen doesn't follow any central rule at all. And it's the hardware Silicon Valley of the world. India also, this is beginning to happen. The shock of not having taxes, GDP growth, etc., forces you to insist. Animal spirits cannot come in a Ram Rajya. It's extremely simple. So an existential crisis when the treasury buffet of the government goes empty will force the changes that we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arvind. So on that positive note, it gives me great pleasure to bring this webinar to a close and thank our 3 speakers for excellent insights on technology and urbanization. This is obviously a huge topic and a lot more has to be discussed and debated, but I hope we can start the process, and on behalf of CityNet, we are more than happy to help engage anyone who's interested in pursuing this further. And as you know, we have a strong presence in Korea thanks to the city of Seoul, which is the host of CityNet. We also have a presence in Yokohama, which is also a co-host of one of our offices. And so we are more than happy to help in any way we can. And Kirti has been a very active member of CityNet for several decades. So before I end, I see Kirti on the screen. Would you like to say anything as a final remark, Kirti?
No, thank you very much. I'm not feeling well, and I'm not in a space to talk, but extremely delighted to have this sessions, some brilliant presentation from Pitroda Saab, Professor Park, and Arvind Bhai. Arvind Bhai, I'm going to chase you, I think, for a long. I wanted to be very active with us in terms of change that, we want to bring about. Vijay Saab has been absolutely terrific. I worked with him for about 35 years, and it's amazing. I just can't tell you how happy we all are, and what a wonderful learning experience this has been. Thank you very much for your time. Vijay Saab and Pitroda Saab, is odd time for you early in the morning there. And also Professor Park, is odd time for you at the other end at night. But thank you for your contribution. We are very, very grateful. Thank you very much.